South Africa has witnessed political storms before, but few moments have stunned the nation as much as the recent scene that unfolded live before the eyes of millions. President Cyril Ramaphosa, a leader known for his calm composure and careful words, was thrust into the center of chaos when he was physically dragged off stage in a shocking public spectacle. The footage spread like wildfire across social media, leaving citizens speechless, opposition leaders emboldened, and analysts scrambling to decode the meaning of what many are calling the most humiliating moment of his presidency. What began as a routine presidential appearance quickly turned into a brutal public scene. Ramaphosa had been scheduled to deliver a keynote address on governance and accountability, highlighting his administration's efforts to tackle corruption, rebuild the economy, and restore public confidence. The atmosphere at the venue, however, was tense from the start. Protesters infiltrated the gathering, voicing their anger over unemployment, load shedding, and what they saw as unfulfilled promises. As the chants grew louder and tensions boiled over, security forces rushed to contain the situation. In a move that shocked the country, Ramaphosa was abruptly pulled away from the podium, almost manhandled out of the hall, as cameras rolled and the crowd erupted. The optics were devastating. A sitting head of state, visibly dragged away from his own stage, projected weakness to some and vulnerability to others. Within minutes, hashtags like #DragButUnbroken, #Ramaphosa and #presidential chaos trended across Twitter and TikTok. Opposition politicians wasted no time in amplifying the humiliation, calling it evidence of a leader who had lost touch with his people and whose authority had crumbled before their eyes. Yet, in the hours that followed, Ramaphosa re-emerged defiant, firm, and unbowed. In a nationally televised statement that carried a tone of controlled anger and determination, he directly addressed the incident. "Yes, the world saw me dragged away," he began, his voice steady but forceful. "But what the world will also see is that I remain unbroken. No amount of chaos, humiliation, or disorder will deter me from the work of justice. South Africa deserves stability, and South Africa deserves better. I promise you justice will be done." The president's words, particularly his insistence that he was dragged but unbroken, struck a chord. Supporters hailed his resilience, praising him for refusing to let the spectacle define his leadership. For them, his bold declaration transformed a moment of weakness into one of strength, reframing humiliation into determination. Critics, however, were less forgiving. They argued that powerful speeches could not erase the deep-seated anger that drove protesters to such extremes in the first place. To them, Ramaphosa's response was a carefully scripted attempt to mask failure with defiance. Analysts across media platforms offered competing interpretations. Some viewed the moment as a potential turning point in Ramaphosa's presidency, an opportunity for him to connect with citizens by acknowledging their frustrations while asserting his resolve to act. Others warned that the incident symbolized the dangerous disconnect between the government and its people, a gap that no fiery statement could bridge. The symbolism of the dragging itself has become the subject of intense debate. To many, it represents more than just a failed security response. It symbolizes a government being pulled in different directions, a leader being yanked away from promises, and a country struggling to hold its leaders accountable. The phrase, "dragged but unbroken," quickly turned into a rallying cry for both supporters and critics alike, supporters using it to champion his resilience, critics twisting it into a metaphor for stubborn leadership refusing to face reality. What makes this moment particularly significant is how it humanized Ramaphosa. Long criticized for being too cautious, too quiet, and sometimes too detached, his raw declaration after the chaos revealed a side rarely seen, a man wounded by humiliation but unwilling to be defeated. His promise of justice, though vague in detail, suggested not only action against those who disrupted the event, but also a broader push to restore order and deliver tangible results. Still, questions remain. Will Ramaphosa's bold words translate into meaningful change, or will they fade as yet another political speech lost in the whirlwind of public anger? Can his leadership withstand the ridicule and memes now circulating online, or will this moment mark the slow erosion of his credibility? One thing is clear, the images of a dragged president will linger in South Africa's collective memory for years to come. But equally, so will his words, "I remain unbroken." Whether history remembers them as the defiant stand of a resilient leader or the hollow defiance of a faltering presidency remains to be seen. For now, Ramaphosa has turned humiliation into defiance, a dragging into a declaration, and a public spectacle into a rallying point. South Africa is left watching closely, wondering whether their president's promise of justice will prove to be more than just words spoken in anger after a brutal scene that shocked the world.